you shouldn't use generative AI unless you know the topic you are dealing with. So that's one thing. And then if you don't know, at least you have a way to check the facts.
What is the problem you're trying to solve? And it may or may not be that technology and/or AI is appropriate for that particular problem. But if you've identified that actually AI can help, the sooner you start organizing your data, cleansing your data, making it accessible, the sooner you can start benefiting. Because I think you're right, people don't quite see the relationship between just sticking in a bit of AI software and the fact that their company data actually has to be fit for purpose.
Absolutely, Corinza. So the post bit, the pre bit, before applying AI, I always say AI is a tool. It's kind of you put data, bad data will give you garbage, garbage in, garbage out. So you need to put a lot of efforts in the pre kind of AI application. But another, I'm going into the failure type of, the pitfalls type of thinking where, business struggle the most. So once they go through that hurdle, they put the efforts in the data and they clean it and they have all the tunnels and they're working and then they run kind of the AI model. Another pitfall is afterwards, is the post AI kind of deployment. A lot of businesses and teams, they forget about monitoring the tool. Once, they test the accuracy, it's working. Okay, that's it. They press a button, they forget about the tool. They forget that they need to monitor the AI model. There are a lot of models, AI models that drift in terms of performance, and they need to be kept monitoring. So there is a famous example of Zillow, which is an AI startup in the real estate agency. So they built an AI model to predict price houses. And then based on that price house, market prediction, then they start selling, buying, the houses from the households. So at the beginning, it was working fine because the accuracy of the model was very high. But then because there were other factors. So some of the other factors is that like the model was not tested enough and there were issues with, governance and so on. But there were the aspect of the lack of monitoring. So after a while, they stopped monitoring the tool in terms of whether the performance is still high or not. And then because of that, they lost hundreds of millions because they kept buying those houses that were overestimated. So they made a loss.
Yeah.
Fortunately, after a while, they were able to spot the problem and they rectify it and so on. But this is a big issue for businesses who don't monitor their models afterwards.
For our listeners who may have heard the term but perhaps don't know what it is, would you mind explaining about AI hallucinations and how dangerous they can be? Yeah.
So that's another favorite topic. So I guess before we talk about hallucination, we need to put it into a context. So if you talk about hallucination, you are only talking about generative AI. So it's just one piece of AI. It's not the whole of AI.
Sure.
So we are talking about generative AI. So as a definition of generative AI, so the main goal is to generate. And I don't want to go into the details because it becomes too complex. But basically, what we are using natural language processing, so NLP, plus transformers, so a little bit of, function to understand the semantic. And then what the model does using transformers and tokenization and all that is going to predict the next word. So each time the model predicts what should be the next word in that sentence, what should be the next and next and next until you have, a good, formulated paragraph.
Sure.
So hallucination, by definition, is a design feature because kind of like the generative AI model is built in such a way to answer and to generate text. So the problem is, especially for topics where there is not a lot of training on that topic. So I don't know if you ask ChatGPT about the weather. So we know that ChatGPT has been, has like billions of parameters. It has been trained on a lot of books, the whole Wikipedia, the whole internet that went into that training. So you would guess that there is a lot of subject about the weather in that whole thing. But if you ask it about a very, kind of like niche area, there will be very little data in that kind of training bit. So because kind of the model by design has to answer and has to predict the next word. So if I ask it, give me, talk to me about using genetic algorithm to go to the moon, which has absolutely no sense, The model has to answer. So it says, okay, kind of moon, what should I predict? Generative AI, genetic algorithm try to predict what's the next word. It comes to a certain sense where it starts making no sense because it's just generating what should be the next. And if you ask it, can you give me a reference? Can you give me a book title on this subject? Using genetic algorithms to go to the moon. So even though we know that there is no book or no articles on that, by design, the model will start fabricating because it has to give an answer. It will give you, such an author, Djamila, wrote a book on this in 2010, and it was a book with this title, and it has 200 pages and so on. All that is fictional because we know it doesn't exist in real life. But because the model, it has to answer and it has to predict the next word, then it will keep predicting and saying things. So my advice for people, and because it's a feature from the design, there are like ways to reduce it, but you cannot eliminate it because that's how generative AI works. So my advice for clients is that you shouldn't use generative AI unless you know the topic you are dealing with. So that's one thing. And then if you don't know, at least you have a way to check the facts.
Yeah.
Those are two important questions. So if you don't know the topic and there is no way you can check whether that paragraph that was written by the tool has factual, a right factual, aspect or not, then you shouldn't use generative AI. Especially if your application deals with external, has a customer perspective that there are a lot of examples where we have failures, for example, there was a delivery company who used, generative AI, in their bot. So it becomes an AI generative bot. And then suddenly the bot with a little bit of manipulation, starting saying bad things about the company, saying that the company is not performing, that you shouldn't use this company, you should use the competitors and so on. So there are like risk associated, especially if it's external, because your whole external reputation is based on that AI bot. And if it says something bad about you, you cannot just go and do it because the damage is done. But also it has implication even if it is internal. So there was an example, not to name the name, but an example of a big phone company, a mobile company that used generative AI internally, not externally. So they let their employees loose, say, okay, experiment with those tools, see what you can happen. And by error, or by kind of lack of awareness, what the employees did is that they wrongly put kind of their intellectual property patents about their next mobile into the, into the question, into the prompt. Obviously, anything you put into the model, when you ask the tool, it goes into the model, and there is no way for you to get it back. So without making it in purpose, they have eventually given a commercially patented kind of like a confidential piece of information into the tool. So anytime, if someone is lucky, they can manipulate the tool to get back that information and the competitor can use it. So be very, very careful when you use generative AI tools, whether internally or externally.